I don't know if I actually believe this. I had been saying I did, but I don't know if I do. I remember just looking up at the monstrance. I said, all right, either this is really God or it's not. And I have to make a choice. Because either everyone's really reacting to this so strongly for a reason, it's a really good reason to be excited, or it's not God, and this is all just madness. And I have to make some kind of a choice. My name is Cassidy Stinson, and I first really encountered our Lord's grace in Eucharistic Adoration about 5 years ago. And it was an experience where I call it kind of a grace of a reconversion, which is a funny thing to say because I was really Christian, for my entire life up to that point. But at that point in my life, it was at the end of high school for me and right before I went to college. I had really started to enter kind of a dead phase in my faith. I was still going to church. I was still very involved in my youth group and my the life of my parish, and I was an altar server. And for all of that, I'd really kind of lost interest in my faith. I had an opportunity to really kind of confront that summer of that year before I went to college, to kind of take stock of where I was. But at that time, I was really at a point where it wasn't anything very exciting, but there were a lot of habits of sin that were built up in my life. And I had really started to become less and less engaged with my faith. I really just had no interest anymore in pursuing those activities. So this encounter with our Lord really happened the summer, as I said, before I went to college. It was the summer of July 2011. And I got invited by my parish to help out with a youth conference that our parish was going to. The real highlight of these events is they're built up in a way that the pinnacle of the two main evenings is Eucharistic Adoration. It's this really awesome experience of praise and worship, and they bring our Lord out and throw him on the altar in front of 1,800 teenagers. It's nothing like I'd ever seen. I remember when we were there, as this experience was starting, we'd had all these speakers and talks leading up to this event. And I remember just seeing how excited everybody was. And it just sort of, it confused me. I really had no idea why everyone was getting so worked up. I was looking around and I saw that everyone was just very emotionally engaged. It was this very powerful experience for the whole room of people. And I was just so confused because I had always recognized intellectually that the Eucharist was Jesus. I had said that intellectually, but I had become so dead in my faith at that point that I didn't really believe it in my heart. And so I suddenly found myself kind of torn between these two truths that I wanted to hold, the one in my heart and the one in my head. And I looked around and I was remembering this belief, that I claimed to profess, that was Jesus. And I said, do I really believe this? I'd been saying I did, but I don't know if I do. And I remember just looking up at the monstrance. I said, all right, either this is really God or it's not. And I have to make a choice. Because either everyone's really reacting to this so strongly for a reason, it's a really good reason to be excited, or it's not God, and this is all just madness. And I have to make some kind of a choice. And I just looked up at the monstrance. I said, all right, God, if that's you, I need to know. Just tell me or something. And it was the strangest thing. I remember it was this moment and kind of all of the music and the noise and the excitement of this liturgy where there was just this point of silence. And in this time of silence, as silent as 1800 teenagers can be, I was just like staring at the monstrance. And then this really powerful feeling went through me. It was the strangest thing. It was like an electric shock or something, or a hot wind just hit me in the heart. It radiated out to the ends of my hands and my feet. And that wasn't even the craziest part, because it came with several realizations, I guess you would call them. The first was just this overwhelming clarity suddenly. It was like God was showing me how far I had fallen away from him. It was this moment of just like absolute, sudden absolute clarity of all these sins that I had let just build up in my life and hadn't done anything about. And they had built up a wall around my heart, and they were really just sort of encrusting me and keeping me away from him. And I could see that. The second was this absolute certainty that was God, that was Jesus on the altar. Just like as clear as like the chair in front of my face. It's just, I went from not knowing to being just overwhelmingly obvious. Like I couldn't understand why I doubted in the first place. And the last thing was, for all the pain that I could feel I'd caused God, I could tell he loved me anyway. The combination of all those three was really just absolutely overwhelming. So I very naturally responded by breaking down and crying. I just, I basically just fell over in my chair. And I remember I was just laughing at myself. I was laughing actually at how much, at how obvious it was. It went from just, total uncertainty to, of course that's God. And yet, I was really broken in a way by recognizing how much pain I'd caused our Lord, and how much I'd let myself fall away. And so that the next day, after I'd sort of pulled myself back together a little bit, I remember I went to confession and just kind of laid everything out for the priest in a way I hadn't been so open before. And afterward, I walked out, and we had an adoration chapel in the conference room right next to where they were hearing confessions. I remember just kneeling down and listening, looking up at the monstrance again and feeling just sort of this purifying fire kind of washing over me. Like all the walls, it literally felt like a burning sensation of all these walls that I'd built up in my heart being burnt away and removed and sort of blown away. And that experience, I would never have guessed it at the time, but that experience is what eventually kind of built a foundation for my faith, for a relationship with God, and eventually led to my considering the priesthood and entering seminary. So 2 months after I had that experience was when I entered college. When I got to college, it was an environment that was just absolutely not Catholic. It was antithetical in so many ways to the faith and to being Catholic. And because I'd had that experience, that really vivid encounter with our Lord, and I had just this bedrock certainty now that was him in the Eucharist, I was very intent on staying Catholic, on being involved in my faith. So I immediately signed up for our campus ministry and got involved with the other Catholic students there, befriended many of them. Every academic year, the college invites everyone who's just joined the Catholic community to go to a retreat center and just spend a couple of days getting to know the other Catholic students, hearing talks from the students about what it's like to be a Catholic on campus. And again, I had really only just gotten to college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had signed up for a major to be a classical studies major, study ancient cultures, but I just had no practical idea what I wanted to do with it. And so my idea was, God and I are kind of on speaking terms now. I think I should probably ask him what I should do with my life. I remember, again, going and praying in adoration. It was this, the kind of the final highlight of our time there that weekend, and just sitting before our Lord and praying. I'd had the opportunity to visit Italy, to visit Rome and Assisi a couple of years before, And that was what really got me interested in classical cultures. So I thought, I'm going to pray through in my mind, just sort of visualize all these places I'd seen. And as a classicist, I could have gone back and been an archaeologist or, studied these cultures, studied these sites. So I figured if I prayed through these places, the right one will stick out somehow. And so I was really flipping through things like a mental slideshow. And I, would visualize this one temple or, like another ruin or something, and would, like, none of these thoughts or these images left me with any sense of peace. It was great uneasiness. And as I kept sort of flipping through them, just randomly, I remembered walking one day with my father in front of the Pontifical North American College, which is the American seminary in Rome. And all of a sudden, the thought just comes out of nowhere: you could be a seminarian. And I have this mental image of myself, like, dressed in, like, the full black and Roman collar of a priest. And out of nowhere, as I'm imagining that, comes this really deep sense of peace, just, unmistakable. And it was just really confusing, because I didn't want to be a priest. I had a girlfriend. I'd fallen in love with the church's vision for marriage. I really loved the idea of marriage as a vocation, so I couldn't understand why I would have suddenly a great feeling of peace about priesthood. But it was there, and after 3 seconds or so, I freaked out, because I just had no interest, really. I couldn't understand this attraction. But through the grace of God and really, like, wrestling with it with the guidance of some holy priests in my life, I started to understand that what I was really attracted to so much in the married vocation was the same fatherhood that was lived out by the priest. We call him father for a very good reason. And that was, I think, kind of a turning point for me to really see that, through the grace of God, I could live out a vocation as a spiritual father and have the same fulfillment, a greater fulfillment even, than I would have had in a married vocation. But throughout all of that, it's always been our Lord leading me, especially through his presence in the Eucharist. It's just always been this guiding light, a beacon for me to always come back to turn to for guidance, to turn to for reassurance at the difficult moments. And always has been the foundation for everything that's happened in my journey of faith.